Okay, so whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching it on a recording, just go nice and easily as you start off. And whether you've done this before or whether you're new to it, it always takes a little bit of time to settle in, things to not be in a hurry. Yeah, obviously, we want to be able to develop this art, and we want to be able to progress and get what we want out of it. And we can sometimes feel in a bit of a rush to do that, but over, over time you'll realise that the apparent speedy way isn't always the most efficient and the best way. So nice and gently, listen to your body. It's a key thing in Tai Chi. So being aware of your body, you'll see how we use that in various ways. But one very important thing is if your body's really saying to you, this is not good for me at the moment, then listen to it, consider what it's saying. So standing with your feet hip width apart, nice and loose in your hips, and just turning in this center part of your body between hips and waist. And when we move in the center part of our body, it touches all parts of our body. So this is sometimes described as being like the hub of a wheel. Think of something like a bicycle wheel with the spokes radiating out. When you turn the hub, then every part of the wheel will move. It's also true that the hub of the wheel is fixed into the frame of the bike, or if you think of a car or a cart. And so there's what can be at first sight a kind of strange duality here, where it's actually the stillness of the hub in the frame of the vehicle that enables the movement. In Tai Chi, we bring together opposite qualities, extend and contract, up and down, in breath and out breath, and stillness and movement. We bring them into one whole. The generic terms would be yin yang. They don't have a specific meaning, but the yin yang is the circle divided into two. And we look for the connections between them that enable both. So bringing a quality of attention to the posture, the movement, how you're moving. As I said earlier, how you're feeling, as I implied earlier, are ways of not only changing our physical qualities, but of actually beginning to settle our attention in our body. This is the first understanding, I suppose you would call it, of this quality of stillness. That learning to direct our attention into different aspects of our body is a good way to just get a sense of calmness, again of stillness, of spaciousness as our thoughts begin to settle. The focus of attention is very specific in Tai Chi on our posture, and in particular on the lower part of the body, from the front hips and waist downwards initially. Thinking about where our feet are. Beginning to feel the weight of our body gently pressing down through our feet. And again, turning into the center of the body. And that center part of the body, and by this I'm talking about the area between our hips and pelvis and our waist, is the part of the body that begins to drop down towards the ground. And this requires a very nuanced, very subtle adaptation of our posture that has to be taken slowly and gently, because it's unusual. We're trying to allow gravity to work down through our body, to allow our center of gravity to drop, to root down in Tai Chi terms, rather than, as we are so often encouraged to do, to push up against, to strain against gravity, to carry our weight in the upper part of our body, to pull ourselves up, and so on and so forth. So having begun this process of bringing our attention into our body, just a step back really from all this sort of activity of our daily life, not a rejection of it, not a denial of it, but just a sense of pulling back. We begin to focus our attention in specific ways, and rooting down, the lowering of our center of gravity is a primary physical quality, and it's a primary physical quality that also deepens this sense of stillness and calmness in our minds, because we literally bring our attention to the center of our body and from there down into the ground. So we ground our attention. So when we use terms like centering and grounding in Tai Chi, they're not metaphors, they're actual physical processes. And this is important because this is one of the things that we can take with us out of the practice into our daily lives. Both on a physical level, the rooting down gives us a more sensible posture, a less strained posture, and significantly a more stable posture. And the training of our attention, the training of our nervous system, that enables that attention to come down into the ground, into our feet, into our center, is also something that we can carry with us, so that when we meet the stressful moments in our day, the hectic moments in our day, it's as though we have access to this place which is a little bit quieter, a little bit more spacious, a little bit calmer. Then we want to take that into movement. And so we try to move from the ground through our center. Again, going back to this idea that the center of the body is like the hub of a wheel. If you ride a bike, for instance, or if you drive a car, then what happens is, however the vehicle is powered, moves the hub of the wheel in one way or another, and the wheel starts to turn and we move along, hopefully. So having, in a way, I suppose you could describe, sort of fixed the center of the body into the ground, we then can turn more easily. And this movement will affect, particularly the upper part of our body, will affect the lower part as well. That's perhaps a little bit more subtle, but experienced people, you may notice changes in your legs, slight changes perhaps in the distribution of your weight. But in particular, going into the upper part of the body as you turn, your shoulders will follow that movement, your ribs will follow that movement, and eventually your arms will follow. This is summed up in a series of one-line phrases, essentially, in the Tai Chi tradition. We say first in the mind, rooted in the feet, transmitted through our legs, and expressed in our upper body and arms. The first in the mind does not imply that we're forcing the body to do anything, or that it's all about the mind, but rather this process of bringing our attention into our body, focusing our attention, and beginning to focus our intention as a result. And all the movements that we make have an intentional quality. When you turn to the left, it's an intention to turn to the left. When you turn to the right, it's an intention to turn to the right. Not forcing the movement, because our awareness tells us which is the correct time to turn. We turn a certain amount, and then we reach a point of what we could call fullness. One part of your body is extended, and then we allow ourselves to go back. We don't get to here and then try and push further, or we don't think, oh shit, is now the time to move. So rhythm begins to establish itself in Tai Chi. Again, you could define this in terms of yin yang, but the rhythm produces a vibration that we begin to resonate to. And this is one of the ways that we can understand the notion of energy in Tai Chi. It's a kinetic energy, flowing energy that begins to balance and harmonize through that quality of calmness in the mind and the spreading into our body and extending into this nice steady rhythm. So all of these ideas, all of these principles are available to us in this one simple exercise as a way of just bringing them to the surface. We go beyond this, and so these qualities will fade into the background a little bit, but we don't want them to disappear, and we don't want to start just moving from our shoulders, moving from our arms. We don't want to copy the movements in the physical sense, and particularly those of you with more experience. It's very easy. If you know the exercises, you can do them in a dream while your attention is elsewhere, planning the shopping trip you've got to make this afternoon or whatever. But constantly trying to very gently gather your attention in the body. Now turn your hands palm forwards, raise them up a little bit. Feeling the quality of the movement in your arms, a flow of movement in your arms. So not holding your arms out tight. If you feel that your shoulders or your back are tightening up, lower your arms down a little bit. And then drop your hands down. One foot forwards. Keep the width of your step and about the same in terms of length. Now, a gentle push against the ground, or again, if you're more experienced with this, that feeling of being pushed up from the ground, and letting the center of your body turn. Here we really appreciate that sense of transmission from the legs. So this, what I just described as a kinetic energy, is one of the really important energies that we work with in Tai Chi, and we can begin to direct that. We feel this sort of springiness developing in the legs, and we direct it to the other leg. And so on many different levels, and quite subtle, we learn to move, if you like, the energy to different parts of the body in ways that are beneficial to us. And this principal kinetic energy is the main ones we work with, but there are many others. And then change over. So these opening exercises are very valuable. They have an aerobic quality to them, very gentle aerobic quality, and that's always good. And they help us to warm up and to loosen up. They're a good early morning practice just to sort of oxygenate the brain and so on and so forth. And also a good way to review some of the really important elements of Tai Chi practice. And then just shake out. In all of this, we have to also take account of our breathing. For the most part, especially to begin with, just allow your body to breathe naturally. Don't try and force a breathing pattern. Some of you will know I sometimes talk about breathing method and breathing patterns. And if you're comfortable with those, if they work for you without you having to strain, then you can begin to make use of those. If you don't know them yet, if you haven't had a lesson, and don't worry, your body will continue to breathe, and it will probably match that rhythm that I was talking about. Now go back to this parallel stance, thinking a little bit more about this. Feet are hip width apart. That hip width can be measured from the outside of the foot or anywhere up to the inside of the foot. So there's a little bit of variation. You find all of these variations in the Tai Chi Qigong spectrum. I think a lot depends on the actual structure of your body. And again, experienced people bear in mind this may change, we will change. This is one of the reasons that we're practicing. But the principle is that your feet and legs can now support your hips. your hips can support your shoulders and the rest of your upper body. If you're standing, say, with the feet too close together, you start to wobble around. It can be an interesting exercise to find the route in that, but not right at the beginning. And just gently rocking your weight forwards and backwards. I'm going to come a bit closer to the camera so you can see I'm not bending my head forwards, I'm not bending in my hips, I'm pivoting from my ankles. I'm doing this quite big, and that's what's going to happen. I'm going to fall over because if I go back too far, gravity just pulls me in. So one of the really important things that we learn to be aware of in Tai Chi is how well aligned with the pull of gravity. To give you an example, if I take this pole, in theory, I can find a place for the pole where it's assumed bent actually, but and in theory I can find a place to let it rest, and then I could just walk away, and that wouldn't happen. In practice, it's quite difficult to do that, but there's a theoretical point of equilibrium. I'm trying to avoid the term balance here. And if I carry on with the pole, if you imagine that pole going up through the center of my body, then this is what we're trying to do. And to find that line. But I'm doing this with the pole. It would be helped if I could have some guide ropes like you'd find on a tent, and they were spread out, and I could support the pole with the guide ropes, and the pole would also support the guide ropes themselves, and find a way by adjusting the guide ropes where it was held there. And we can think of muscle, tendon, ligament, fascia as being like the guide ropes that apply to that center line, and what you prefer, I think, in terms of applying to the skeleton, so that eventually we come to rest. And ideally that will be with your weight just behind the balls of your feet. And since that gives you a slight sense of tilting forwards, again, this is exaggerated, simply allowing your hips to drop back. As though you've been out for a walk and you've just rested your bottom on a wall, just to rest for a little while. And this is rooting down. This begins the process of allowing your center of gravity to drop down. Think of your pelvis hanging from the spine. And you'll notice now there's a slight curve there in my knees. There's a little ball tucked in behind each knee, and a slight curve in my hips. There's a little ball resting in. This again is a very significant change in the body, because by taking the pressure off our hips, our knees, the joints, the legs, we are required to work harder in the muscles of our legs. So don't equate rooting down with knees bending. We will get to that bit. Knees can bend a little bit further, but to all practical intents and purposes, for standing in the supermarket queue and waiting to pay your money, rather than standing with your knees locked back, which is very damaging to the knees, we can just settle down. We don't have to go into a deep stance. And again, there's a process of the mind there as well, because it requires that intentional coming into your center, bringing your attention to the ground, and all the calmness and stillness that is associated. Here we get what is sometimes referred to as a state of central equilibrium. Zhongding is the Chinese term. And arguably, we want to maintain central equilibrium through the whole of the practice, and ideally through the whole of our lives. So there's much to be said for standing. It doesn't have to be complicated. Become familiar with qualities, the physical qualities of central equilibrium, mental qualities of central equilibrium, so that we become familiar with this place. Like having your favorite place down by the river or something like that. If you've been there before, you know how to get there. So then moving on from here, Now be careful if you're new to this and your knees, with your knees in particular, letting the hips drop down a little bit more. This deepens the root, makes the feeling in the legs stronger until eventually your legs will push you up. Don't go up, locking your knees back, go to that top position we were just looking at, and then allow gravity to pull you down. And then, so gradually we learn to let our root drop further through the ground. And when we push up, we don't lift the root up, we grow out of it like a plant grows out of its own root. Body expands and contracts, yang, the yin. And we do so in conjunction, in cooperation with the pull of gravity. We allow gravity to pull us down, but then we feel the push coming back up. Again, this very kinetic energy. We begin to see how what we call the yielding to the pull of gravity is, in a way, the starting point of that cycle of movement. Without the movement downwards, it can be no upward. Like bouncing a ball, you've got to drop the ball down. You gradually feel the effect of this through the body. Again, a steady, but this time quite a slow rhythm beginning to build. One that your body begins to resonate to. And this is, again, a very subtle constant in intention. So notice that we start off very simply, first in the mind, rooted in the beat, etc. And then it becomes, with those reference points, this becomes a very subtle process, an increasingly subtle process for mind and body. As we learn to listen once again to our body, we notice more and more subtle changes. We can bring a sense of intentionality to those changes. We can do that through rhythm, through working with that rhythm. We can do that through imagery and visualization. And again, those of you with more experience, through recalling the memory of those patterns in the past. Intentionality is could be seen as an instruction of mind to body. Now bring the hands around as though you're cradling a ball. Then as you push up, feel your body expanding, pushing your elbows out, turning your hands over, let your hips drop, feel your shoulders following, feel that drawing your arms down. Turn your hands at the bottom and body expanding. Letting your arms begin to resonate to that rhythm. Just being aware that it's very easy to lose the focus of attention on our whole body and just concentrate on the arms. It's a very common, in many ways, very natural thing to happen. And so trying to just make a point of really feeling your hips drop down, feeling gravity draw you down, and waiting to feel that push up, that rising energy coming up through your body, and then draining. This refreshes the movement, brings a quality of a fresher energy as we expand and draw up and maybe breathe in at this point. And as we sink down and release and breathe out, we release the more sort of stagnant energy. So this exercise is called rooting down. Now turn your hands palm out, push up. This is the exercise to wild goose. And it's the image of the bird in flight offers a quality of smoothness of movement, a rhythm of movement, a grace. quite a strong movement, then you can begin to appreciate those qualities within the body. It may be that the image doesn't mean anything to you, in which case, particularly people who are new to this, don't go chasing after the images. We use a variety of images. Hopefully some will resonate for you. Others may take a little while longer to mean something. But remember, there's no hurry. One more time. And then letting your hands drop. Cross in front of your belly. Push up, elbows being pushed out. Drawing your fingers around a nice smooth circle. This is parting the clouds. Remember that feeling that we get on a grey day when the sun pokes its head out. And that sort of open and expansive feeling is the one that we're looking for within our body. This dynamic of sinking down and pushing up is a constant force. Gravity is always present, we hope. And so there's always a response from our bodies, from the ground beneath us, of an upward movement. Whether or not we're harmonizing with that is a different matter, but this is one of the things that we're trying to do in Tai Chi, of course. Tai Chi and Qigong, in a way, takes the energy from the ground. So now we're going to change again, and this time we bring our intention just to one side of the body, sinking down, letting your arms hang down by your sides, feel the weight of your arms, and then focusing on one side. Again, your elbow leading, pushing up, and at the top of the movement, just wind your arm around and pull down. Once your hand reaches the bottom there, open the fingers, bring your attention across to the opposite side gently, and then your intention is to really focus on the expansion and then the contraction on the opposite side. This is called Dragon Plucked Stars from the Sky. So it's a little bit like plucking a soft fruit off a tree. You don't grip tightly, you wrap your fingers around, turn your arm, pull down. Move into the other side. Just trying to stay aware of the qualities of movement, the subtleties of the movement, right up through that side of your body. Aware of any differences between one side of your body and another. And increasingly, as we get more experience with these arts, aware of how we might bring a quality of intentionality to those changes within the body to enhance the ones that are useful to us and to just gradually move away from the ones that are actually blocking the movement. If, for instance, you feel a bit tight in one shoulder, can you bring a releasing quality to that shoulder? Maybe you want to move the arm a little bit less, make it not quite so high. Or in your mind, just be more aware of that connection to your foot. It's your hip going up that moves your arm, not your shoulder, for instance. I sometimes make use of an image and imagine that those areas that feel a bit blocked are like a rock in the bed of a river, and the movements like the flow of the water over the rock, gradually just wearing it away, smoothing it off. Try not to speed up. Our busy lives tend to make us rush, and that can be very apparent in this exercise. So make sure that you completely finish on one side. right down to the bottom of the movement, and your fingers opening and spreading out a little bit. Then bring your attention to the middle of your body, then to the other foot, and then push up. So it's that tendency to speed up often comes from the way that front part of our brain, that part of our brain that's constantly thinking, constantly analyzing, maybe thinking about what they're going to do next, or what happened yesterday, or something like that, and will speed up for us. But by not pushing it away, but by giving it something else to think about, like the foot or the center of your body, just encourage a slowing down and quietening. Now, this time, let your hand come down and just let your hips drop back a little bit. So you maintain that clear passageway for the pull of gravity downwards and the response from your body upwards. Bring your hands to your sides, to the center of your body, and this time lift them up. Push up just a little bit above your head, and a little bit in front of your body. Like there's a low ceiling, you're pressing your palms of your hands against, and then returning, coming back to that center particle. Now push up again, hands a little bit in front of your body and pushing outwards. And then turn a little bit from your hips, turn back and do the same, but turning in the opposite direction. Don't worry if you get confused with directions. And then back. And then facing forwards and pushing out. So we have 4 directions of movement, 2 of which are very much governed through the turning of the center. And then going back to the beginning and pushing up. Notice how the movement naturally brings your attention back to that center part of your body, and from there into the ground. And from there we push out. And once again, return. Pushing out. Don't skip that returning part of the movement. And so this exercise really helps to train that process of returning, coming to that quieter space, that quieter location that I mentioned earlier, and pushing in 4 directions. Body expanding, yang, the yin. Once again, just allowing the rhythm to settle in. Noticing how our bodies begin to naturally resonate to these rhythms. So we find another aspect of Tai Chi that I feel is very important, which is one of connection. I'm told that when one part of our body is in motion, one way or another, the whole body, the whole of our cells, including the mind, are really engaged with that. And so this leads us into, once again, this gathering, this collecting of mind and body, rather than this feeling that we're, as we say sometimes, we're all over the place. And this too enhances that sense of central equilibrium. In fact, I would say it's a key quality of central equilibrium. One more time. Now let your hands drop down, and once again, focusing on one side of your body, the movement of expansion, pushing your hand out, let it swing up, drawing your fingers back just a little bit, tracing out a half circle and straight down, almost brushing the tip of your nose. And then again. So a similar feeling in some ways to Dragon plucks the stars from the sky, but with this outward rotation of the shoulder, increasing this sense of an opening and expansion in that side of your body. It's called circling palms. And then if this is comfortable for you, as your hand reaches the top, you turn. Don't rush this. So now we can think in terms of this exercise in several stages. We expand, hand comes to the top, you turn, you contract, hand comes down, turn back. One more time. Again, notice if you have a tendency to rush, to try and start one stage before you finish them. And then same thing on the other side. Maybe 2 stages at this point, expanding and then contracting. Just gently encouraging yourself to complete each stage before you begin the next. And then the turn. And the 4 stages. And your arms hang down. Be careful with these next 2 exercises, so don't overdo them. I'll try and do them quite big so you can see what I'm doing, but you don't have to do them anything like this big. Just push your hips back, and this will tilt your upper body forwards, drop down a little bit, and then let your hips drop down. And this is a vertical rotation in that center part of your body. It very gently brings your head and shoulders up. Push up. So again, 3 stages here. Hips going back, and then gravity pulling your hips down, and then pushing up. Try not to strain your shoulders or your back to come to the upright position. So this leaves you with a lovely open, spacious feeling in the upper part of your body. And changes how we view ourselves becoming upright. We come upright by yielding to the pull of gravity. It's still very strong on the back and it's strong on the knees, so go nice and carefully. This time, letting your arms follow the movement. This is called rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. And as your hips go back, with your back extending and then your arms extending, dropping down and sitting back. And then start again. Again, don't rush the stages. If you feel that paying attention to these individual stages is somehow breaking the flow of the movement, which is something you may begin to notice, don't worry about that. As you become more disciplined in this and you get used to that precision of movement, the flow will return. And in fact, the flow will be much more sustainable at that point. One more time. And your hands come to rest in front of your belly. Turn horizontally and then push your hips back so your arms are pushed out, swinging your hips across. Come back to the upright position and turn. Then turn the other way. It's called polishing the table. Using both the vertical and the horizontal movements in the center of the body. This is exaggerated. Notice how my hips have gone out, and then they swing across, and then my hips drop down, and I turn back. So once again, you can see the significance of what's happening in the center of the body, and the importance of allowing that center, that hub of the wheel, to be supported by the ground, by your root, to enable the movement. One more time in each direction. Now, turn your left foot out, so mirror my movements. And once again, step forward with your left foot, as though your feet are on the diagonal corners of the square. And then once again, beginning to move your weight. Pay more attention now to that transfer of your weight. Think about where you found that sense of equilibrium, where you felt the weight settle earlier. And make that your focus, make that your target, like you're playing golf and you know where the hole is that you want the ball to fall into. And give yourself time to settle there. Going back to the stillness within the movement and the root and the alignment of the body, these are all things that in an ideal world, perhaps we could sustain the whole time and never actually lose them. In practice, we lose them all the time. The world does that to us. But what we can do is to begin to, in a way, spotlight with our attention certain moments where we get a sense of return. So let your weight come back into your back foot. Just allow yourself time to settle and then feel the push. Don't let the push into the front foot. Allow the time to settle. And again, this may initially break the flow of the movement. But since what we're talking about is really a process that is intentional, it's not a massive physical change. We're not inherently bending the knees more. We're just looking to get a feeling of allowing our hips to release a little bit, to allow the muscles in our hips and our back and our legs and buttocks to unclench and open a little bit. And this only takes a moment in time after a while. It's useful to spend some time with it to look at how we can do that. But in an everyday sense, it's just a moment. And so in the end, it doesn't actually break the flow. And once again, it enhances the flow because it gives us the chance to just feel that push from the ground. So once again, that moment of stillness is integral to the movement. And that moment of stillness, that focusing, gathering of our attention is aided by the very attention that we bring to these key points in touching. So they're like imagine if you get a pack of cards and you get two cards and you lean them against each other. You can just walk away and they'll stay there. You take one card away, the other one will fall over. So both are important, both are equal, both support each other. This time you come into your back foot, raise your toes a little bit. Front toes and more of your weight settles down into your back foot. When you come forwards, push your back knee forwards, raise your heel. People with more experience, you should be thinking in terms of the percentage ratios of the weight between your legs to further develop that sense of awareness and intention. Remember, it can become very precise until you can get to a point where there is so much weight in, say, the front leg that you can bring the back foot in and then push it back, put the ball down, lower your heel, come back. Front foot in, put the heel down. And again, There are stages in the stepping. We extend the leg. We place the foot on the ground. We press in gently, plant the foot. And it is a very gentle process. Imagine you've just potted something, so a plant in its pot. You put the soil in, you put the plant in, and then you gently press down around the plant. Has that kind of feel to it, really firming up this connection to the ground. You shake out. And then on the other side. And again, just begin to move your weight. We're trying to maintain the root while we do this. This is a very important exercise. And then, this really contributes to our stability, our mobility. Tai Chi has a very good deserved reputation for helping people with stability problems. And this is a key exercise for that. Enable us to keep our root, our stability, our central equilibrium, whilst in movement. It also conditions our legs so that our legs are capable of sustaining this. Beginning to raise your toes and your heel. There's a slight extra shift as you do that. You're trying to bring your upper body directly in line with your supporting leg. I stand here and I'm leaning backwards, I'm being pulled backwards. That puts us into conflict with the pull of gravity. And as we learned in previous exercises, if we can harmonize with the pull of gravity, it will actually help us. It will help us remain upright without straining, and it will provide the sort of impetus for that flow of energy. Stepping in. Take a moment to make sure you're aligned and rooted in the supporting leg. This is not a race. You may find yourself struggling to do this. It can be interesting for all of us to maybe just put a hand on a wall here and give yourself a little bit of extra support and really investigate this process of drawing your foot in, how we're doing that. Are we straining or somehow struggling to do that? And then when you feel comfortable with this, taking the steps forwards or backwards, notice how my foot comes in, forwards and out. So I keep the width of my step. You shouldn't feel as though you're walking a tightrope. That space to allow yourself to root down, feet in a position that can continue to support your body. And then going back. As you get more experience with this, then all these different qualities combine into a very distinctive feeling. And people with more experience hopefully becoming more aware of what it's like when you lose that feeling and how you can begin to get it back. Now, we're going to do a series of exercises using this stance and using that movement, trying not to just focus on your arms. Starting with your hands hanging from your sides, you push forwards and then just let the arms swing. And imagine you're doing this in the water, so there's a little bit of resistance to the movement, especially in your arms, that encourages this feeling of releasing all the way through your body. And again, as you get more experience in this, people very familiar with this very simple exercise, where are the patterns of expansion and contraction in your upper body? Which of those do you want to enhance? To enhance them? So fisherman cast the net, this one. Some of you wave-like movements through your body. You're facing forwards. moving forwards and backwards. Your arms are swinging forwards. Now we can bring about a very simple change that as you start to go back, you turn towards the back foot. Now your arms drawn across your body, swinging up a little bit and then down in a curving movement that we build into the bigger movement, allowing the arms to drop down as we go forwards, turning, swinging the arms up, soften the shoulders. This image in front of you of a sideways figure of 8 or an infinity sign. Just imagine your fingers tracing out that sign. And again, particularly those of you familiar with this exercise, how can you use your intentionality to enhance the movement? Now, shake out, change over. So have your left foot forwards, starting with fisherman castanet. Lovely little exercise, I think, contains so much of what we're trying to bring into the more complex exercises. I've been practicing this exercise for decades, and yet I still find nuances within it. The more I can bring my attention into my body, the more I notice. This is not just a case of accumulating more and more fancy exercises. An internal art. You're moving through them. And turning. As you just drawing your fingers through water in a stream or river. Until seems to be sufficient energy there to move your arms a little bit more. In the feel of the water against the palms of your hand and against your chest. This time I'm going to go forwards, but you could go backwards. So I'll turn my front foot out, going into the front foot, and as you turn, bringing my back foot in, stepping through. Planting the foot before I'm moving. And if I'm comfortable with this, I would just raise my knee. If you don't feel that, you can feel that that's throwing your posture off, just keep the toes down. If you do raise the knee, remember, pull of gravity on your hips is what will both help to keep you upright and to keep you rooted. So a strong focus of attention there, making sure you don't tighten up in your back or your hips or buttocks. Changing direction when you need to. Don't strain in your arms and your shoulders. Bringing your feet down. Again, if you're struggling with this, if you're feeling very, very wobbly, one suggestion I would make is that you can do this exercise from side to side. You move and you turn, let your arms come across and then swing it up. So the thing about what I'm doing now is I've got the wall behind me. So as I move into doing this with the legs, maybe raising the knee, if I do feel a bit more wobbly, really what I want to try and do is, if as it happened there, I want to be able to, get there and, oh, if I can settle, I can essentially relax rather than strain and struggle if I'm paying attention. There I go. So what I want to try and do is just settle down. But if I find that I can't do that, and it can be very tricky, I know that the wall's behind me, so I'm not going to fall over. I can just sit back on the wall. So I'm more likely to be able to just investigate this. Can I release a little bit more in my head and my knee and find that stability? And if I can't, I'm not going to fall over. So it's not a disaster. So we build confidence in these basic principles. We build confidence in our ability to regain our route when we lose it, because we know that we're going to lose it. We meet situations in all sorts of ways in our life, where physically, mentally, emotionally, we get pushed off center. But one of the key things in Tai Chi is we learn to come back. So we learn to maintain the environment in which the energy flows, in which we can maintain a sense of stillness and calmness, even under pressure. Now, just rubbing your hands together and very gently with the pads of your fingers tapping over your face. Work up over your head and neck. Then shoulders and arm. It's going to help to take some of the strain out of your muscles. It's also a good energizing exercise on the other side. And a very good way of bringing your attention into your body. It's simple. Once you're back, you don't have to follow any particular order. I generally do, but it's not necessary. So, letting this, bringing your attention back, just very simply into your body, going around your hips, and then relax. Light on your belly, and into the upper part of the chest. Good. So, the final exercise, going back to this notion of a return. How do we come back? I think this is a really important aspect of Tai Chi, and again, something we can take away with us. It's called Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain. For me, the image of the mountain encapsulates many of these qualities, all of these qualities really of central equilibrium. So, from the parallel stance, again, letting gravity draw your hips down and then feeling the push up, arms coming out, but already aware of the pull of gravity on your hips, your shoulders, your arms, bringing your arms into a circle, letting your elbows drop and then your hips dropping. So a useful exercise here is to just give yourself time to notice what for you are the things that bring you back to the mountain. The imagery, the sensations in your body. It's a very personal thing. But again, what would you find most useful to just remember when you're standing in that supermarket queue? Or it doesn't have to be something nasty. It could be an exciting moment, but try not to lose the stillness, because we learn that stillness enhances those moments, just as the stillness enhances movement. To practice in the return, embrace tiger, return to it. One more time. hands. Maybe taking a couple of slow, gentle breaths. And shake. Brilliant. Thank you very much for watching and joining in, everybody. Feel free to contact me with any questions. Enjoy the rest of your day.